Horehound, biological control of horehound in New Zealand. It's one of the herbaceous weeds that Angela was talking about, which caused quite a problem. There was a survey done on the density and distribution of horehound in New Zealand as part of this project. And the cost, also the survey was about the cost of horehound to sheep farming in dryland, high and hill country areas. There were 95 landowners, mainly from Canterbury and Otago, responded. Horehound turns out to be a major problem in lucerne and other pasture crops. Its infestation covers around about 3.8% of the land. The cost of horehound to farming operations were associated with control, chemical and non-chemical, lost production, contamination of wool, pasture replacement, suboptimal grazing regime to avoid horehound at critical times, and other opportunity costs. A conservative estimate is around about $6.85 million per annum. Highly conservative. It doesn't take into account some of the cost factors were not possible to quantify from this survey. So this is kind of what horehound looks like, growing in pastures, particularly up around Marlborough area. I don't need to say a lot about this, but a small woody herb. This project created a bit of a stir within the herbal growers of New Zealand, who figured that they were utilising wild grown horehound for making herbal remedies. There was quite an active approach from this group to Ronny as part of the EPA application for release of the 2 biocontrol agents. Our process within our team is to engage, before we apply to EPA, engage with groups or individuals or organisations that have concerns about our biological control agents and our biocontrol program. So Ronny did attend a herbalists meeting and talk to them about their concerns. Also explain to them about how to respond to an EPA public submission or an EPA application for the release of biocontrol agents. Unfortunately, it appeared that that information didn't transfer as well to those people as it might have done, and their concerns that they raised with EPA were more around, I might use this as a herbal remedy rather than bringing up a sound scientific reason for a biological control program not to continue. So we've just heard that EPA have approved the release of these 2 biocontrol agents. Last week, I think they approved. So these are the areas where horehound was found as part of the survey. These are the distribution areas in North and South Island. I did this bit already about the costs. All right, and so what the plant looks like close up. As part of our surveys, we also do, in New Zealand, we do an insect and pathogen survey along with doing the distribution and density of the plants wherever we find it. And Simon, you might remember, I'm trying to guess, but did we find something that we hadn't found before on horehound in New Zealand? Do you know that? Oh God, he's looking as blank as me, thank goodness for that. He's the boss guy, so I figured if he didn't know it. I got a funny feeling we did find something else on it, but I cannot remember what it is. So I think it was not a great importance, but it was something new that we did discover as part of our surveys. So, you know, we always do surveys in country on our new potential weed targets to make sure that we do that for a number of reasons. One is to make sure there isn't something already here that's controlling the plant before we introduce something new. We also need to find out what the fauna is of the plants that exist in New Zealand to see whether we're going to introduce something which is going to be attacked by a resident parasitoid or predator which is present on the plants. So we need to look at those things as well. And part of those surveys also allow us to identify the distribution and density of the plant so that we're well aware of how big a problem it is when it comes to the EPA application. And those things particularly these days, include some level of economic evaluation. So just more pictures of the plant. I always like pictures of the plant. There's never many words in my talks, they're usually pictures of the plant. This is just another picture of it. The seeds, it's what the seeds look like, and they are very small seeds, but they're produced in these kind of clusters on the plants, but there are several clusters up the stems of the plants of seed pods that occur, so it does produce quite a lot of seed. It also is something that tends to grow. I think some of the early pictures, a lot of it is quite herbaceous and sort of rosaceous, and it's quite small, but I've certainly been in paddocks where it's been up this high. The plant is this high growing and almost solid, so it is invading and can grow extremely well in New Zealand climate. So this is one of the 2 agents that we're actually looking to release. This is a foliage feeding plume moth. You can see the larva in the top left there, and the adult plume moth. Plume moths are quite cool things, you know. They're quite delicate, but they are quite good. The reason I should add into this, we were able to actually piggyback on the on an Australian program. So the Australians have quite a problem with horehound. They'd already run a biological control program, had already host tested these insects and released them into the Australian environment. So we were able to piggyback on top of that work and bring these this program forward quite quickly, into the point we're able to do an EPA application. Normally these things would take quite a few years to get through, but this is quite a new project, and we've been able to get to this point because of the work the Australians have already done. And so this biocontrol agent is already established in Australia, and this is the other one that we'll be looking at to introduce as well. Again, already established in Australia. It's been host tested and passed through their system. So we were able to utilise that information and apply to EPA for its release. And as I say, that was approved last week. That's a really quick talk. So, but that was about it from me. I'm sure if Ronny was here, she would have filled it in a great deal more about that. But feel free to ask me any questions. Probably not so much about horehound, but if you have any questions about any of our other biological control programs, I'm here to answer those as well. So feel free. Thank you. We're going to have lunch early. Oh, Hester.
How are these 2 agents doing in Australia? Or when were they released?
I couldn't answer either of those questions, I'm afraid. The horehound program in Australia has been going for quite some time, but I don't know what level of impact they are having. I couldn't tell you. Ronny would know those things, but I'm afraid I don't. So, yes.
Yeah, just interested to know with your fast tracking, how do you get by with the alternative hosts in New Zealand?
So we're still doing host testing, so there isn't a lack of host testing that we're actually going through in the process of the introduction and release for these insects. But we're able, instead of having a larger list of test plants, we may find that all of the potential non-targets that we would test in New Zealand have already been tested by the Australians. So we may have needed to do no testing whatsoever. I'm not sure whether we've done any at all on any of our New Zealand relateds, but I don't think we have, because in fact they've all been covered by the Australian host testing in the early days. So we haven't, what we've done in terms of shortening the process is that we actually haven't had to find out where horehound originated from and gone and surveyed horehound in its endemic range to find out what insects and diseases are attacking it, then select from those as to which are the most effective and which are the most host specific, and then run the host specificity trials before actually applying to EPA. We haven't had to do any of that stuff. It's already been done by the Australians. All right? Yes?
Are you sourcing the insects from Australia then, or?
Yeah, so the insects are coming direct from Australia. So yeah. They'll be arriving in the country later this month, I think it is. We're expecting them to arrive into our containment, and we'll be expecting to make releases of both of these agents this coming summer into the New Zealand environment.